Welcome back to The Explainer. So you've probably seen this circulating online. It's this viral internet thought experiment that literally has everyone screaming at each other in the comment section about, well, the fundamental nature of humanity. Today, we're taking a really close look at the famous red and blue button dilemma, and we're going to uncover why the traditional interpretation of this game is actually completely backwards.
But before we even dissect this, I want you to make a mental choice right now. Imagine you're presented with two buttons, red or blue. Which one do you press? Have you decided? Good, because you are now personally invested in the rules of this game. And man, those rules are about to get very interesting.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's the supposed moral framing of the dilemma that you've likely heard a million times. Everyone in the world must privately choose between these two buttons. If more than half the world presses blue, everyone survives. So it's framed as pure altruism, right? But if fewer than half press blue, then only those who pressed red survive. So red is framed as pure selfish self-preservation. In this whole setup, blue relies on this incredibly fragile global threshold, while red just, looks out for number one.
Section 1. The framing collapses.
Now, we're meant to look at this as some deep, revealing test of our willingness to cooperate with our fellow humans. But the moment we look closer, we realize that this entire moral setup, it's logically broken right from the start. Because if everyone presses red, everyone survives. Just let that realization sink in for a second. The supposedly selfish choice is actually the only strategy that guarantees universal survival. And it does it without requiring you to trust billions of complete strangers. Pressing red literally doesn't kill anyone. And this brilliantly illustrates the real dynamic at play here. When we compare the actual outcomes, red guarantees survival with absolutely zero trust needed, period. Blue, on the other hand, introduces the possibility of total catastrophe. Think about it. Blue is actually the dangerous choice. Why? Because it places the fate of literally all of humanity on a single, massive point of failure, an arbitrary percentage threshold.
Now, people often compare this internet game to the famous prisoner's dilemma, but conceptually, it's not a true prisoner's dilemma at all. In a real prisoner's dilemma, mutual defection leads to an absolute tragedy where everyone is worse off. Individual rationality actually undermines the collective welfare. But here, if everyone defects by pressing red, it leads to a perfectly fine outcome for everyone, universal survival. There's no tragic tension here at all.
Section 2. How true cooperation works. So if this button game isn't actually exposing a failure of human cooperation, what is it exposing? To understand that, we kind of need to step away from abstract internet thought experiments and explore the evolutionary reality of how human beings actually work together. Humans simply did not evolve to coordinate at a planetary scale. We evolved to cooperate in small groups. In those environments, your actions were visible. Your personal reputation really mattered. You knew exactly who contributed to the group and who defected, and the feedback was immediate. Trust wasn't this vague, abstract concept. It was earned, it was monitored, and when necessary, it was withdrawn. Under those specific conditions, human cooperation works incredibly well.
But when you scale that up to billions of anonymous actors, we encounter an evolutionary mismatch. This is when our deep-seated instincts for small group coordination absolutely misfire because they're being projected onto massive impersonal systems. And this brilliantly illustrates how the button dilemma exploits this mismatch perfectly. It basically forces us to treat billions of strangers as if they were our local small group community. It removes all visibility and accountability and then asks if we quote-unquote trust the group. But at that scale, there is no group. It's only an abstraction.
Section 3. The illusion of centralization. Which brings us to a major flaw in how modern society operates. We increasingly and mistakenly frame large-scale problems as if they require one uniform, universal solution to be solved. You see this centralized mindset everywhere today. One policy, one threshold, one outcome, applied to everyone all at once. The extreme danger of this thinking is that if you force society into a single decision structure and participation falls below that magical threshold, the system doesn't just partially fail or adapt, it collapses entirely. That is not a feature of human nature. That is a really dangerous feature of how we've chosen to organize at scale.
When we compare problem-solving models, a synchronized global decision is abstract and fragile. It's exactly like our button dilemma, demanding perfect timing and mass compliance. But incremental local changes are realistic, they're decentralized, and they're resilient. To see how real-world problems actually get solved, let's look at something super surprising: the massive global decline in household air pollution. Now, household air pollution didn't decline because the whole world just magically voted perfectly at the exact same time to end it. Instead, it followed the environmental Kuznets curve. As societies gained wealth, individuals and firms naturally adopted cleaner fuels and improved their ventilation. They made these incremental changes because local, individual incentives completely aligned with the broader outcomes. The progress happens in layers, through local knowledge and experimentation, not through some forced global unanimity.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it explains what happens when we demand massive, centralized solutions to our problems. Public choice theory explains exactly why they fail. The costs of massive regulatory systems are widely dispersed among the general public, but the benefits of influencing those rules, those are highly concentrated among specific interest groups. So special interests effectively hijack the rules because they have super strong incentives to do so, while the public, facing incredibly high information costs, just remains completely disengaged.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that this creates a one-directional trap of centralization. In step 1, you impose uniform rules to solve a perceived problem. In step 2, interest groups inevitably capture that regulation for their own benefit. And by step 3, the system expands, it accumulates way more authority, and it becomes totally opaque. Interventions just layer on top of interventions. It becomes incredibly difficult to unwind, and what started as this noble solution basically becomes an entirely new, deeply entrenched problem.
Section 4. The real lesson.
So let's bring this all back to those viral red and blue buttons we started with. We've seen that the dilemma isn't actually about human selfishness at all. So what is the profound, kind of unsettling truth hiding behind this internet game? Well, real robust cooperation distributes decision-making rather than concentrating it. It works precisely because it aligns local incentives with broader outcomes. It allows for error without causing total global catastrophe. And most importantly, it does not require universal trust among billions of anonymous strangers to function. It never requires everyone to press the exact same button at the exact same time.
I actually want to read this quote directly from the source material because it permanently reframes this whole concept. Quote, "That is not cooperation. That is centralization wearing the language of cooperation." End quote. When we demand mass, synchronized obedience and try to call it cooperation, we are absolutely lying to ourselves about how humanity actually thrives and solves problems.
So the ultimate takeaway here is this. The system is the problem. The red and blue button dilemmas is super memorable because it feels really deep and philosophical. But the danger it exposes isn't human selfishness. The true danger is our modern obsession with building fragile systems that literally demand perfect compliance just to avoid catastrophe. I want to leave you with this really provocative question to think about. Where else in our modern world are we mistaking obedience to a giant button for actual human cooperation? Take a hard look at the massive centralized systems in your own life. Are they built on true resilient cooperation, or are they just demanding synchronized compliance? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And remember to keep questioning the structures around you.